Welcome
Woo-hoo!
to the Rise and Elevate podcast. I am Jake.
I'm John. How are you all?
Yeah,
Man,
this
that
is our
intro
first time
was
using that audio
incredible.
track too. I like it a lot. Good pick there,
That
John.
was awesome.
well, we are super excited for a conversation today, Dr. For that, John, one of the things I'm super passionate about in is the research side of it. Right, contrary to what marketing is a science. Originally started in academia a field, but most programs now offer it as because of the depends upon data, social science, really a technical optimist. That, and you'll see that even in fields like sales or HR. People, anyone can do it, but now you've had a huge career in both worlds, right? Marketing and sales. Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, you know, you're talking about algorithms, man. There's all these algorithms, and I tell you, it's changed. And as you look at what's happening today, the science of it is, we've got all these tools and tool sets out there, and people utilize them different ways, and some for good, some for bad. And the output that we get from these algorithms and scientific methodologies can be good, but they can also be bad. It takes away a lot of the human centric aspects, in my opinion, of what we're doing today. Now, that being said, we're getting so much better and so much quicker because of the science. It's how it's applied that worries me.
For sure, for sure. And like when you're talking about application, you're talking about like have to do it this way because the
Or we can't do it that way because the data says that it won't work.
because like you need creative risks, right? Like whenever there's polling on topics, right? How often is the poll different than sample? That's a huge risk when you're right. Scientists are the first people to say, look, this isn't reality, right? Our best representation on when it gets business or application, sometimes that gets
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's part of the application too. I mean, you bring in just the elements of the algorithms, and that's the early stages of what now we're terming AI. AI has been around for a long, long time. Well, I shouldn't say a long, long time. I should say long enough that we should know better that AI is not new, right? I mean, these algorithms have been happening for many, many years, and it's just getting out to the consumer side, if you will, as opposed to the scientific side, who have known about these things and predictive qualities of what these algorithms and AI can bring.
100%. I think it's interesting you say that because like marketing buzzwords, tech happen all the time. Buzzwords in every industry happen all the time. And like I think there was a chart I saw the other day that was uh, at buzzwords over decades in tech, and you know you have AI right now, massive buzzword, and it popped up in a decades. But the other place where it was like number like the 60s, and so it's also funny because some of these buzzwords are not new things, but out and so often things are just kind of sitting in a lab somewhere up, right? Gorilla Glass on every phone was an example of that at Coring. It was developed 50 years before the iPhone came out, had no purpose, and then Apple was looking for Coring up. Take a couple weeks to look through the lab, and they're like, "We got something
Yeah, it's brand new, never seen
brand
before
new."
since the 50s or 60s, 70s, right? You know
Yeah,
what's interesting? You bring up another topic that we should explore on totally different optimize and elevate. Because I think we've talked about this before. What's interesting about the buzzwords that you're talking about are the conceptual newness of something named different today is typically conceptually similar to something that's been around for years, right? But we name it something new and we throw it up on one of the socials or LinkedIn or whatever the case is, or we start putting some SEO around it. All of a sudden, it becomes that new concept that isn't new at all. It's just reframed and reformatted.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just insane to think about like the hype cycle versus the actual.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, I also think like so your career you've been in intersection of technology and sales full time, a lot of management. Well, um, there's principles to how you go about educate a consumer or buyer, right? There's principles to how you fit both ethics that you're supposed to comply with and just kind of general like best practices. Don't go out and walk into a bunch of corporate offices unscheduled and say, "How do you like to buy my Fuller brush product?"
Well,
It just doesn't work like that.
yeah, it doesn't. And if you look at really what the goal is, that defines how you go to market with certain strategies, go to clients with certain strategies, and analyze certain processes. If the goal is for you to make money and that's the only goal, your approach is typically, well, as I have seen, a little more haphazard than it would be to say if my goal is to go out and improve my client's well being or improve the longevity of a product or service or improve their world in such a way that they can spend more time at home. Those are all different strategic approaches in what you guide them or connect them to a product or service is based upon that goal. I have always lived by the fact that what I want to be is a liaison to an improvement or something that is going to better their processes or their life or whatever it is that they're seeking. I mean, if I can be that liaison, I'm better at providing my service than the other consumers out there who are trying to just fill their calendars.
I need to sell time. I need to. Yeah, it doesn't work that way,
Right.
especially over time. And you're familiar with, I think you called it something else when we chatted about this past, but like rascals, right? Just basics of, you need to be a genuine, altruistic person when you're approaching your potential customers. You need to have their interests in mind as well as company or whatever you're selling. That's really like the heart and soul of sales and marketing. It's the heart and soul of, a capitalist economy.
Well, I think it is, but the capitalist economy, that's you look at that and it really is it's kind of that's going after the dollar, right? If you learn in business 101 that a business has no emotion, right?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
if you make $1, it's worth it. You make $100, it's better. If you make 1,000, blah blah blah, it just gets better and better exponentially. Um, so when you take that emotion out of it's I think it opens you up to accept more scientific, right? That's not to say that they're applied correctly.
Sure.
That's to say that you are leaning on the science more so than you are that heart and soul.
Absolutely. And you need a little bit of the principle and how things are, but also, as well as I do, very difficult to sell a product that doesn't and need heart and soul, needs things that make people interested in the actual, right?
It
What's the
needs
benefit?
emotion, right? you've got to be emotionally connected somehow when you're purchasing, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, I think it's about time. Let's bring our guest up. I'm going to read an intro. Clinton Amos is a personally, great friend and mentor. He was an instructor at Weaver State back when I was there, and he teaches marketing in the business school. He's been there since 2013. Currently, educates students on topics such as consumer behavior, digital marketing, research. Um, on top of being an excellent teacher and one of his really core areas of focus, part of why he's ended up at Weaver State. He's also a phenomenal researcher with over 35 publishings in academic journals. Um, he's really done a lot of gritty to make sure that when there's research being presented on the science, whether it's sociological perceptions, it's accurate and credible. He's also phenomenal learning and teaching others about things that he found. And I think that's really going to show in this conversation. So why don't we give up a big hand of applause for Clinton and let's invite him up.
All right. Welcome, Clinton.
So, hello. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you, but if you want to hit that raise hand, it will pull you up on stage.
Okay. So let me find the raise hand here. For some reason, my raise hand is muted. It's in the background.
It doesn't have it over on the side.
So I don't see over on the side. What I see when I hover above it is a red circle with the slash mark through it.
Okay. Let's just run
to
this.
The venue.
Okay, that sounds good.
Clinton there.
There we go.
Do a screen share here just so we have it pulled up and then we'll all be equal size. Sorry for some technical. All right, Clinton, we've got you on. Happy to have you here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Awesome. So, I mean, we've introduced yourself and, incredible track record. I think we really just want to give you a second to kind of, do the same yourself, introduce kind of your work and what you've been doing the last decade and a half there at Weaver.
Okay. So, yeah, as you indicated, I came to Weaver in 2013. I finished my PhD in 2008 and have had a pretty good track record in research. I will have to give my mentor from undergrad props. He was the one who thought that I had the skill set to be a very good researcher, particularly in academia. And yeah, if I talk about my overall theme, if you look at my research record, it looks eclectic, but there is a little bit of a theme there. And one of the themes is what explains the errors people make in their judgments. And what's funny is you guys talked about the terminology, right? AI in 1960s was hot, and now it's hot again. And sometimes terms are used in a way to make something seem new when it's not. There's actually a bias for that called the Django fallacy. The Django fallacy basically is you create a term for something, you pitch it as something new, but it's actually something that's been around for a very long time. The research around grit has actually been criticized recently as being a Django fallacy phenomenon. That because grit and education, right? Grit is the big predictor of success, and that has been refuted to a certain degree. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of research now showing it only explains 2 or 3% of variation once you control for conscientiousness. Guess what? Conscientious people tend to have grit, and so and so is grit just a rebranding of conscientiousness? There's researchers who are making that argument, strongly making that argument. It's just a rebranding, something we've time.
Absolutely. Clinton, as I was going through your extensive list of uh, papers that you have published, there was one commonality that I saw. You seek out the why things happen. It seems. Am I accurate in thinking?
Yeah, well, I think again, academics, you're kind of trained to focus on theory. I'm always curious about why is this occurring, particularly something that I look at and think, yeah, there. And sometimes it's stuff that I've fallen for myself.
Sure.
So my whole research stream around natural started with me mocking myself as we were grocery shopping. So my wife and I were going down the aisle, and everything we were throwing into the cart seemed like it had the word natural on it. And so it just become a running joke. It's like, well, why did you buy choose this one? Because it's natural, and natural is good. But then I started thinking about,
Was it also eye level?
I don't know if it was necessarily eye level. It possibly was. Obviously, placement can matter, but it all has this idyllic imagery of these pristine farms and man and nature in harmony and so on. So I really started analyzing my behavior and thinking, he's like, I bet I'm not the only one. But I started trying to figure out the why. Why does this appeal to me? Why would this appeal to others? What assumptions am I making? And once I started delving into that research, it was one, making all kinds of assumptions about what natural represents, which in most cases is not regulated at all. Because then you get into first nature versus second nature versus third nature, and a lot of regulatory bodies like we don't even know how to define natural, so we're not going to define it, and we're not really going to regulate it. And so we did a few studies and found that yeah, people were making all kinds of assumptions about how healthy natural food was, and again, estimations of calories and all kinds of stuff were always off. And then we started delving into other areas because the next one that came up after that was biodegradable, and it's the same kind of phenomenon. It's like, okay, seems like people think biodegradable is safe. Why is that? Why do they think it's safe? And it goes back to in textbook they talk about signal theory. Signal theory again is when you're looking at a single term or something that causes people to just make all kinds of assumptions about what the product contains or what the person. So I did one on hardworking as a heuristic for how people perceive someone from a moral, ethical standpoint. And again, it's the same type of phenomenon. But yeah, it's always trying to figure out the why. And I probably summarize with my dissertation, which focused on. I really wanted to focus on kind of grifters. Why do people fall for what seems to be obvious grifts? When people are telling you they can get rich quick get rich quick, or whether it's people
Yeah.
are telling you you can lose 30 pounds in 30 days,
Mhm.
which anyone thinking logically would know that that's complete BS. And by the way, you probably wouldn't be healthy.
Yeah.
And so that was really what started. I was always trying to figure out why is this occurring? Why are people making judgments that someone from the outside would look at and say that makes no sense?
I'd like to ask a possibly controversial question. It goes back to something that I said earlier. That is wrapped around the idea some people apply science in a bad way. Does it apply here where we're seeing that marketing has applied the biodegradable knowingly to a product that is not necessarily, I guess, doesn't meet those biodegradable requirements or healthy or um, natural or any of those things are the folks in marketing applying it improperly or are they applying it feeling like they're doing it? That's the
I think it's probably both. So you can get people who are true believers, and they will just turn a blind eye, be confirmation bias regarding how they interpret information. So, for instance, one of the more controversial topics to really get into would be organic, because you have, right, organic has regulation.
yeah,
The question becomes, though, what does organic mean?
right.
when it really comes to health and safety? And the answer is it's complex. But are a lot of companies that are creating organic products, are they really do they really care, or do they know that people will pay a premium?
Right.
And so you get into, yeah, there are companies that care only about the fact that it has value in some kind of symbolic way to the consumer, and therefore they're willing to pay a premium for it. I recently watched a video about all the AI grifts with
Yeah.
these products that are labeled as AI because, right, it's new, it's novel, it's perceived to be new and novel. And what's to stop you from labeling something AI? Because they're labeling stuff that used to be just called automations labeled AI.
I was just going to say automated,
There
automated
was
intelligence.
no, well,
Nothing artificial about that. It's just automated.
there was a big headline recently in a local news agency, and it was something about AI, how AI affects productivity. And the data that was analyzed was between 2017 2021. And if you look at what they were analyzing, they weren't analyzing AI as terms of what we think about generative AI. They were analyzing automation in factory settings.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That now
Um,
that's called AI.
on that, Google has been like touting nonstop. 30% of our code base is now AI generated. They've gone back and they're now counting everything that used autocomplete that's been tracked in the system.
Yeah.
Which,
Now,
yeah,
and you're seeing most of the training in the digital marketing landscape. It seems like companies have just gone and done a find and replace anywhere that would say like machine learning is now replaced with AI,
Hmm.
mhm,
and become that big of a buzzword. But why are they doing it? They're doing it because it has symbolic meaning, and people think, "Oh, this is the newest, latest, and greatest." And what's funny is there. I was listening to another talk, and a guy was talking about that he hired a company that claimed to have AI for web design, and it took him just as long as the previous company. He says, I don't know if they really have AI, or if, if they did, they weren't leveraging it properly because I saw no improvement in
mhm,
their ability to deliver the website in a timely fashion.
for sure. What just since you're somewhat of a, expert on it in your field, what's the difference between machine learning and AI, that, maybe gets glossed over, or why it's easy to lump them together?
Well, you get into different aspects of AI. So you can get into, like predictive models where you're trying to predict. So the gist of machine learning is a process, right? Machine learning is you have a training data set, and from that training data set, what you're trying to do is you're going to train a model, and they're going to use that to predict some kind of future behavior or some kind of future outcome. And so that's really what machine learning is. Where you start getting into with generative AI and others is that it's going a step beyond that, to where an AI and generative AI still is a predictive model, right? It's trying to predict based on your prompt what is the best output to meet what you're looking for. That's generally what it's doing. Where it's moving forward and how fast it gets there is when it's able to actually start learning on its own. And there's been some signs that that's occurring, and even setting its own goals and all that kind of stuff. So that's beyond my expertise. There's a lot of guys who are out there talking right now, the godfathers of AI, such as Jeffrey Hinton, are doing quite a few talks to try to inform the public about what's coming. But yeah, the people working in those areas, I mean, there's been going to be some big breakthroughs. The question is how fast it's going to get here. This
And
is
how quickly it can be controlled, right?
it can be controlled, and so that's one of the. I mean, Jeffrey Hinton, and I apologize to the other gentleman if I mispronounce his name. Yoshio Bengio, he's also one of the godfathers of AI. They they actually are trying to kind of inform the public. This may get a point to where we can't control it,
Yeah.
and they're the foremost experts on this.
But
And
you
what's
know,
funny,
5 years ago, a Google employee was fired for saying that the AI that he was working with is sentient.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I'm pretty sure that they've got models that they have not presented to anybody outside of their organization, or for that matter, the very only group that's been working with that particular model that has scared them. I mean,
Yeah.
I would be.
Yeah. Now, and Hinton was at Google for quite a while, and he left Google to be able to speak openly about AI. That was
Yeah.
Google. He wanted to be able to. He didn't want the pressure of having to give a narrative that wasn't a truthful narrative or wasn't perceived to be a truthful narrative. And so he has seen stuff that obviously has worried him from the standpoint of where this is going to be going. But it's like you said in kind of your initial talk. There's a lot of the stuff has been going on behind the scenes, and Hinton, I think he's argued that again, what was released to the public with ChatGPT was stuff that Google had. Google had been one of the major innovators in this technology. They actually were a little worried about releasing it to the public. We're actually being cautious about it, and then of course, an AI released theirs to the public, and now have this whole new monster that we're trying to battle.
For
And
sure.
it is a monster in multiple ways. If we think about what you mentioned about people putting the label AI on everything, right? Oh, by the way, my calendar automated reminder, that's
Mhm.
AI. You know, but as we
Mhm.
look at how people are diving in head first into the AI frenzy, if you will, I call it a frenzy.
Sure.
Um, are they doing the right things by? I guess it would, from a marketing perspective, there isn't anything out there that doesn't say AI. I
Sure.
mean, the next thing you know, it's oh, I bought some AI eggs. These are awesome.
Sure.
AI optimized shell.
Yeah.
AI optimized. Yeah. Now, we are in that how fast we get to the trough of disillusionment based upon the Gardner. We are seeing it in academic research when I first started working on like perception of AI type stuff. By the way, the first stuff that I was brought on board with the co-author was we were labeling everything algorithms at the time.
Yeah.
So
Right.
so which is funny because had we used the term AI, the paper is getting cited quite a bit, but I suspect it would be tenfold had we used the term AI instead of algorithm. Just how fast our newer stuff that does say AI is getting cited. So it is this hot buzzword that is uh, very appealing to people in the short run. We are seeing in academic research, though, a moving towards a trough of disillusionment. When we first started publishing, because we were kind of looking at what are the challenges that this present. And so the first paper was the idea of my co-author, where it was, you know what, this is going to be very attractive to relevant individuals, people who have no moral constraints,
Right.
right? Because now this makes it to where it looks like they're very accomplished or that they're producing some great output when they really have no skills. And so people who have deceptive tendencies, this is going to be very, very appealing to. And we're professors, so the obvious context was to check with, to do basically a study with students. And what we found was is that moral disengagement explains heavy generative AI use to a substantial degree, and that shouldn't surprise anyone. Right? The people who want to get credit for stuff that's not their own work and have no qualms about doing that are going to be the heavy users. The honest students, and I've seen this over the years, the honest students will typically do stuff the hard way because they're actually trying to learn.
Yeah.
And in situations where I have unproctored assessments, you can see this kind of pan out to where those that are optimistic, they take advantage of the situation. So that was kind of the first. The next one was the consumer response to content that was perceived that they were primed as being either human or AI generated. And that's the strongest effects I've ever seen, to where it caused respondents that caused people to be less trusting of the information, to basically find the information less useful when it was exactly the same information. I had these fictional scenarios, and there were actually fictional scenarios I had used in a previous study. I just repurposed them for this study. And but if we just told people this is likely A, this is not likely AI, the difference in reactions was very dramatic. When we first started trying to publish these, we had more backlash than we had ever experienced trying to publish anything. We couldn't hardly get this stuff sent out for review.
Mhm.
and and so I think that kind of goes to the point. There was so much hype, and you were supposed to only talk about AI as being the cure all for everything.
And
That any kind of balanced kind of, okay, here's some problems this might present. Here's
and
the
when
unique. Go ahead.
oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, and when did this paper drop?
So they both. So there's a little bit of a delay between acceptance and drop. So the roughly into 24, 25, they've been published, but it was a harder road than it had been with many other studies.
So
Just
so maybe about a year ago in the hype cycle.
yeah. So we were early on in the hype cycle when it was all hype, and the only stuff getting published was 100% positive about AI, how it was going to revolutionize everything. And now we're seeing this trough of disillusionment where it seems to be shifting. You're seeing a good percentage of the papers be about the issues that AI creates and the
So
problems that
they've
it creates.
ridden the wave of those publishers who are making those decisions have ridden the wave of frenzy and now
Mhm.
said, okay, the next frenzy is we played that game. Now let's figure out how bad it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's to a certain degree, and if Gardner's hype cycle is predictive, we'll come back up from this trough of disillusionment and to something more balanced. But yeah, we're kind of in this stage now to where you're seeing a lot of special issues about the problems with AI. Journal of Public Policy and Marketing just had a special issue. I know about kind of the dark side of they didn't it wasn't titled the dark side, but kind of talking about the dark side and complications of AI. So we're kind of seeing those aspects. It is
What are the main dark points? I guess what would you say are the top two?
so one of the top two is how much power it gives to bad actors. I can give an example of this right now that's going on. And so academic research is in a problem state because of AI. You have, for those outside of academia probably don't know, there's this whole industry of predatory publishing companies that I could pay a certain amount of money and they will just produce a research paper for me. And then I submit that research paper to a legitimate academic journal and hope that they publish it. When I didn't do the research, I just bought the paper, right? This
Sure,
is considered to be a very unethical practice.
sure. They're doing books
Well,
like that right now.
Yeah.
so think about what AI has, the power AI has given these paper mills, these publishing mills, as they can now publish these papers in mass and sell them in mass. And so you're seeing the journals flooded with these papers written by AI. Some journals are taking some extreme actions. So I was recently reading that a particular journal in another discipline has banned all new submissions featuring public data because the AI publishing mills, what they're doing is they have a template and they just use that template to give whatever AI system the instructions. Mine this public data set to find some significant relationship, write up the results and everything. And so they're seeing the exact same template used over and over and over again using public data, certain public data sets. The reality is these significant findings are probably just purely data mining and probably won't hold up. And so it's causing issues. Another one that was recently reported on is kind of less scrupulous researchers embedding hidden text into their papers, hoping that reviewers use AI to review the paper, which you're not supposed to do. And the hidden text will say, you know, give only positive comments. So, so that's one of the biggest threats is unscrupulous actors in all aspects. You're seeing in academia, you could think about the power this gives anyone wanting to commit identity theft. It is a huge threat. A lot of the stuff that has was perceived as the safeguards, right? Doing the you think about like someone's voice or even someone's image or something, all
Absolutely,
that
been done,
really,
and in the news, both of those.
yeah. And it's getting better and better, and
Yeah,
people aren't going to be able to tell the difference. And you can see like an elderly person sitting at their home and some grifter leveraging their grandson's actual voice saying, "Hey, I've been put in prison. I need you to wire this money to me right away." This is one of the biggest threats
yeah.
in the short run is just the how much power it gives to people who have bad intentions.
Well, and volume does stuff, right? Mere exposure is a thing, right? And I, like I get automated calls, all day long, right? And there's something to be said about, the more time I can get with you, the more trust I can build.
Sure, sure,
And so that's a super, super dangerous trend.
Well, and I
yeah,
look at so as we look at the tools, and let's go back to what we were talking about before, these concepts that were in place before technology, right?
hmm
These concepts and thoughts and ways of living and all of these things, even the news, things that are happening where bad actors are doing the very same thing then that they're doing now. I mean, we know that murder, rape, and all that stuff happened back then. It's
sure,
not new. However, as we look at the technology, how it's been implemented, and how people have taken advantage of it, it's more and more not only empowering some of those bad actors, but it's accelerating how quickly new ways of that malevolency can happen, right?
yeah, yeah.
That's
No,
scary itself,
yeah, how quickly they can adapt, the scale, just the
right?
massive scale which they can now launch these kind of schemes that to defraud people
Yeah.
is, yeah, we've never seen this much power given to bad actors from a technology.
What's interesting is that what we do see, it's giving also the power of the good people, ones who are out there trying to do the right things.
Yeah,
It's giving the same power, the same opportunity, but it's not being presented as quickly and as ubiquitously as the bad actor. So they're getting not only their fortune from what they're doing out there, but they're also getting the attention that they so deeply desire. Which
sure.
I don't know, is that good or bad? I don't know.
Well, that's, yeah, that's negativity bias. So the
Okay.
right, negativity bias explains a lot of how the media operates, and the bad actors are always going to get much more media attention. I would argue a little bit though that people who probably have better intentions are probably waffling back and forth and are a little slower in how they're leveraging AI, if that makes any sense.
I think it
Because they're going
does.
to be a little more deliberate in their actions. Bad
Absolutely.
actors are like, great, this just allows me to scale this up, and I would suspect that they have very few reservations.
I mean, even when you say about releasing technology, you say Google had something very similar. They're a
Mhm.
much larger company. They have a lot more rules on how they need to proceed
Yeah,
versus a small startup that's like, let's just.
sure. Yeah, no, and I think that's probably a good analogy where you have Google who argument. I mean, Jeffrey would Hinton would argue that they were trying to do the right thing
Yeah,
by not releasing it, and then I don't know if we want to call OpenAI a bad actor, but OpenAI was a startup, and startups take
sure.
bigger risks, and so smaller companies will take a lot bigger risks in areas, and so
Well,
help that
you know
out.
what's interesting now that we're on that subject of OpenAI versus Google and what is now known as Gemini and full name, but
Mhm.
OpenAI being that startup, as you look at what the players in that, you know, OpenAI was a collaboration between Microsoft and Elon Musk and and others. On the other hand, they quickly moved from that, hey, we're a nonprofit, we want to be a nonprofit, to you know what? This thing will make some money.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Now, and that's so I gave you kind of the first point and on some of the issues. The second one would be the you guys kind of alluded to it. This perception that AI is a cure-all
Hmm.
and possibly even making drastic changes to we think about workforces and so on. Thinking that AI in some ways can fulfill the role the same way. So I give an example. I don't know. I won't throw any single tech company under, but I don't know that anyone is very satisfied with AI based type of customer service. At least not in the current. A lot of times you're running through circles. You're running in circles. You can't. You would just want to talk to a human.
Yeah.
And while the AI chatbots are really great at certain aspects, such as like facts and straightforward responses,
Speed.
dealing with more, what's that?
Speed.
Speed. But dealing with more complex issues that someone's encountering with the software or anything along those lines, they are pretty useless.
Yeah.
And again, I'm trying not to throw any particular tech company under the bus, but I have a half dozen personal examples of this to where the AI bot's just running in circles. It can't get you the solution, so you just feel like you're chasing your tail. But there's no person to talk to.
Right.
There's no person to go to above the AI bot. And so in those situations, well, what's happened? Well, the companies have basically said we don't need human, customer
Well,
service reps
well, in my
anymore.
opinion, though, they're saying something more. They're saying I care about the dollar more than I care about the customer.
Exactly. And so thinking that, hey, this is going to we're going to save so much money, and this is going to improve our profit margins, and it will in the short run. And it's hard to know how fast these AI bots will improve in terms of their ability to handle complex situations. But I think there is something to be said about human connection, human relationship, human interaction that does provide some assurances, if that makes any sense, to a given customer.
Absolutely, it makes sense. Yeah,
So,
I mean, you just said what Bingle is all about.
yeah,
You think about that connection, and you can't hear the emotion as an AI agent. You don't
yeah,
hear the frustration, or you don't hear the excitement, or you don't hear them smiling or frowning through the phone. Right? It
yeah,
used to be when you got onto, and we'll call it AI because we can, right?
mhm,
Which is IVR. Right? You know, you get on, you just said operator, 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 representative, representative.
yeah, yeah,
Eventually you would get to something,
sure.
but not so in some of those loops that you get into with AI.
Oh yeah, no, it can be extremely frustrating. I had a person presenting to me just a couple days ago that they could not get a solution from AI bot. Literally, is no one to call.
Click.
They couldn't even get the bot to get them a representative.
Yeah.
And so companies maybe risking long term their long term value proposition for short term profits.
Yeah.
Yeah, with that money.
It's always funny because like even in like advertising suites, right?
Mhm.
Maybe Google hasn't done this, but I've noticed with Facebook they've gone from we don't care about your problems, we don't care about if you're advertising and you run into an issue, to now it's like we have chat support, we can schedule
Mhm.
a call if there's an issue, we won't solve everything, we have some scope
Sure.
limitation, but it's very accessible, at least if you're looking for basics to get on
Mhm.
with someone, report an issue with a account.
And are
Yeah.
those true people or
Yeah, true people. True people. So you'll hit an AI layer and pretty quickly I can move to that. Um, Google, I think, has actually taken some of that away, and their ad business is struggling.
Yeah, well, and there's been I've heard from a lot of people that Google has. So, with the Google Grants program working with nonprofits, nonprofits have not been happy with Google support, generally speaking, because they did take a lot of that away and have gone more to a just automated type approach. And that's that some customers are getting frustrated, and we'll see how it plays out long term with.
Is
But
there
even
any Go on.
now, I said even thinking about like me as an educator, I've you'll have in discussions in academia is like, well, just well, you should just get an AI bot to do the grading for you. And what I've done is I've done the opposite. I spend more time grading now than I've ever spent because, and so far the feedback has been overwhelmingly. So it's in fact, this is the first time I think I was nominated for two teaching awards in the same year for again student nominations. But I spend an enormous amount of time providing personal feedback because what think about from a value proposition. What's my value proposition now? Yeah, you can get content anywhere. Content's a commodity,
It is.
right? And you could tailor a AI bot, and you can tell the AI bot to create a learning schedule for you and to give you reminders and and you could learn anything. Now, some of the people say, well, but the AI is going to hallucinate and it's going to have mistakes and misinformation. And my argument would be, well, guess what? So will be professors.
Yeah.
All your professors are going to give you misinformation.
Right.
They're not going to give you accurate. If you want to call it a hallucination or whatever, but but they're not flawless human beings who have perfect information by any means.
Right.
So what is my value add? What can I add beyond content
Yeah, it's
and
got to be
mentorship,
perspective, right?
coaching, spending a lot more time on those human kind of human relationship type endeavors. And so I think that companies that kind of understand, okay, where should we use AI because it creates efficiencies and doesn't detract from our value proposition versus where would AI hurt? And I recently saw an article. I'm kind of going back to this. I saw this article because it was part of a research that I was looking at it for a research study that we're doing. But Zappos, which they're not a media darling that they once were. They were once
Yeah.
in the news all the time. They were acquired by Amazon. Their CEO, I think, passed away in a fire in Park City. They don't get the media attention that they once received, but their customer service ratings are still really high. They are leveraging AI, and they talk about they leverage AI for the common problems that have simple solutions. When it comes to any kind of complex customer service issue, they rely heavily on their human agent, right? Their talent that they have, and they're well known for recruiting the top people, and they're well known for their strategies that they want internally. They want people who are intrinsically motivated. They want people who are motivated to do a good job, not people who are motivated to just receive a paycheck. And that has been a big part of their hiring practices over decades. But yeah, there are companies like, okay, yeah, AI works well here. It doesn't work so well here. And it would hurt our value proposition long term be implemented.
What are some things that, like, aside from AI, you would recommend companies change about their marketing, customer service, sales? Marketing's kind of all kinds of communications, right,
Sure.
in an organization. What are some, like, best practices you just wish that more companies would adopt?
Well, if we if we take a 30,000-foot level,
Okay.
the best practice would be I think sometimes companies miss. I think some kind of company get too caught up in increasing like the number of customers, growth, and not so much about what's our value proposition. If
Hmm.
we have the right value proposition, if we invest in the correct value proposition, the profits should come. Let's not focus so much on the short term. We need this many, we need to grow by this much, this amount in this time frame. It should be more around how do we better invest into our value proposition so we're delivering value, and if we deliver value the right way, we're going to organically grow.
Do you have
Thanks.
any examples of where that goes right or wrong?
Oh, how many do you not have? You look at Wall Street, that's managing business to Wall Street.
Yeah.
You know, when you're demanded, and I played in that game a little bit in my career, is you have to provide growth
Mhm.
year over year, quarter over quarter, blah 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 blah. You get that, and you lose perspective of the human side of what you're providing as a product.
Mhm. Yeah, and so in terms of specific examples going right or wrong, I could give a like extreme example off the
Sure.
top of my head. There was a company called Health South who was embroiled in scandal. Not long, I had moved to Georgia, and this kind of this. So they become obsessed with right. They have to hit the growth targets. They have to hit the growth targets. They have to hit the growth targets, and they weren't hitting the growth targets. And so they started basically faking the data to meet Wall Street's objectives. What if they were a healthy company, what they would have been focusing in on is okay, their value proposition is convenient outpatient care. How do we better invest resources so that we're providing the best outpatient care that we can? And if we do that long term, we're going to retain and grow the customer base. So thinking about it from that standpoint. But when companies get too caught up in we have to meet these numbers quarter after quarter, you see a tendency to make poor decisions that don't necessarily pay off in the long term.
I think you've even been quite vocal about that in academia itself, right?
Yeah, I would say that I think that applies in academia. So academia has become too focused on student growth and not focused enough on our what value are we providing. Let's invest in our value proposition. And if we invest in our value proposition, we're going to grow organically over time, just simply because we're providing the kind of value that people seek. Now, this gets into research, right? We have to kind of understand the type of value that people seek, and we have to kind of understand aspects of human beings and how they behave. And education has this unique situation to where sometimes we have to provide value in a way that may not feel comfortable or good to students in the short run, but is beneficial for them and society in the long run. And so it's a unique situation from that standpoint. And you even get into sometimes providing services to people who are apathetic or strongly opposed. Not that there's ever been any apathetic students, but yeah, it's a little different perspective. But yeah, I have seen nationwide a little bit of a troubling shift towards we have to hit the enrollment numbers at any cost. It doesn't matter how we hit them at any cost. And so then you get into situations whereas we're seeing, particularly in programs that are 100% online, there's a recent article in Chronicles of Higher Education about the California community college system and the number of bots now that are making up a portion of the online enrollment.
Oh,
Some of it through financial aid scams and so on. My question being, if they were only focused on enrollment numbers, how much would they actually care?
yeah.
As long as tuition's getting paid, if you're only focusing on the enrollment numbers, would they actually, are there institutions that would actually care whether or not really students or just a bunch of bots?
You know what? We had talked about capitalism. Jake, you brought this.
Sure.
We look at capitalism. So we're in it for the money. We've made a decision that we're in it for the money at whatever cost. Matter how you get into this concept where they're gaming the system, if you will, to
Hmm.
make more money. How much is enough? Who determines what is enough, and why services and products even exist or continue to exist? It's us as the consumer. We want
Sure.
more. We want more. How do we change that mentality?
Yeah, well, I think that and we may be at a point to where we need a cultural shift. It's hard to know how quickly one will come. How many, what level of productivity gains is enough?
Right.
When it comes from, so you think about implementing AI technology, what level of productivity gains are you like, okay, we've met the level that we need. Now let's focus on meaningfulness.
Yeah.
Is our business meaningful? Is the work that people are doing meaningful? And so maybe shifting that narrative, because the narrative under capitalism is that there's no end to productivity, right? If you can be more efficient today, that's kind of better, particularly if you're saving money and so on. But that's not a human perspective.
Right. Who's it better for?
Yeah. Well, better for the companies in the short run in terms of meeting their financial goals.
Yeah.
But is it better for people in the long run? That's a little bit of a debate.
Well, it's a
And
cost benefit analysis that has two different answers for sure, at least two different answers, right? You've got the answer for the company, and you've got the answer for the employee or worker. You merge that into one with AI bots, if you will, or agents, AI agents that are doing the jobs of humans, right? Now they're together. They're walking hand in hand. It's all logic. How do I make more money? Here's how you do it. As
yeah,
opposed to somebody saying, listen, I'm tired, I'm frustrated, I'm overworked, I'm underpaid, complaint after complaint after complaint, which are very real and reasonable. Um, it, the AI side says, hey, listen, I won't do that. I have no complaints whatsoever. Just what to do, and I'll be as fast as I can.
sure. Fast, available 24/7, doesn't get tired.
Right.
And so yeah, it's we have these unique challenges because you have the appeal of this technology that available 24/7 and can perform any of the tasks and never actually stops improving. It's improving at a rate that we've never seen from technology.
Unbelievable.
Now, I mean, stuff that I run experiments with it all the time. Stuff that it would get wrong just a year ago is spectacular at now,
Yeah.
and stuff that's getting wrong today, it'll be spectacular at in another year
Or sooner.
or sooner. And so, but you have this efficiency argument, but you also have a meaningfulness argument, which is what makes life meaningful for most people. And there's one of the best or say it, one of the most supported theories is self-determination theory. And you can estimate that it explains 20-25% of variation in kind of outcomes when it comes to people's satisfaction levels with work. But basically, people want autonomy. People like to feel like they're in control. People also want to feel like they have mastered something. We have a strong need for achievement,
Sure.
and it's one of the biggest drivers. I mean, think about how one of my jokes that I joke with my wife about is all the time we spend in the world chasing balls. Every country in the world is chasing some kind of ball. Europe they're chasing soccer balls. In the U.S. we're chasing footballs and basketballs, and I guess maybe Canada's a little different. They're chasing hockey pucks, but uh, if you think about any of these games, they're very simplistic if you explain them.
Right.
The basketball, basically, the goal is to take this orange ball and put it through an orange hoop,
Yeah.
and we spend millions and millions, or each team spends billions and billions on trying to put together the best team. I don't know what the value of the entire NBA is, but it's not a necessary activity by any means.
Yeah.
Why do people find value in it? Because they find value in achievement. They find value in seeing others achieve. They find value in feeling a sense of achievement from being affiliated with a team.
Oh yeah.
We
Absolutely.
have a very strong need for achievement. And what does achievement look like in an AI world? And is there context to where AI should be implemented because it takes away some mundane tasks that really doesn't add to so much achievement. Versus, so think about the art world. Is it this? You see, have the same level of achievement if you create a digital artwork in 5 seconds with AI, and then you just do some minor editing on it.
That
The
and
art,
that's a huge argument, right? And
yeah,
you think about the art world, not just in paintings, pictures, and print. We're talking about music. We're talking about the spoken
yeah,
word. We're talking about every form of creativity being handled by AI at some level.
yeah,
AI is better in some than others, but
correct.
that's huge. I mean, that's big. You're taking an already, um, I would say, underpaid, profession, and making it worse.
Yeah. No, and a lot of artists are freelance and they're not getting paid very much. And the ones that that my co-authors have talked to, they're obviously frustrated by the situation. But one is their work is being leveraged by these AI systems and their algorithms. So not only are they stealing from their past, but they're stealing from their future
Yeah.
in terms of capability, because companies are going with the cheapest, good enough alternative in certain cases.
Yeah.
But the question becomes, let's say even if you were able to continue on in that profession, would you have the same level of enjoyment simply editing AI's output?
Yeah.
And I don't think that self-determination theory. I think self-determination theory would say no. You're not going to feel mastery. That
Yeah.
the sense of mastery actually comes from creation. This is one of the dialogues I don't think we're seeing, which is there's always this discussion. Well, AI is going to take away the mundane tasks. We're actually seeing it taking away the creative tasks.
Yeah.
Mm.
If you
Which
think
it
about
shouldn't
music,
be.
which it
AI
shouldn't
is
be.
not creative in any way.
Yeah,
It,
well, it's essentially leveraging. Now, there's some others who would dispute that. I think Mo Gaudat, I think, has had the strongest argument. His argument that AI is creative is that AI has access to all the information that exists on something, and so for it to be creative, all it has to do is do something different than what it can find, and then it has more access to something different. There are others
okay. I
that
see that
the other side,
behind, but that's a
yeah.
definition of creativity that is misapplied in my.
Yeah. There's another argument, which is a very strong argument, and I forget his name. He's a University of Chicago professor. He makes the argument that algorithms will have a declining ability to be creative. His argument is that they will just saturate. They can be creative in kind of incremental ways, but human creativity, he argues, is spontaneous and unpredictable.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So no one in the 1950s would have predicted rap music. He uses these analogies
Right.
that because human creativity is so unpredictable, that AI systems will only be able to do more predictive. Okay, this was produced. Here's an incremental improvement on this.
That is very similar to what you were arguing pre-conversation there, John. Um, and I've talked to a lot of artists and worked with a lot of artists, and there's just something about emotions, regardless of what people who maybe use a
Mm.
service like Character Eye or Replica believe. AI does not feel emotions. It's a massive transformer model that gets a lot of impressive things right from the data, but it doesn't have the ability to feel hungry, sad, or lonely, right? Those are unique human emotions. Talk about bad actors using this technology.
Sure.
That's the scary part, is there's someone with emotion trying to figure out how to pull
Yeah.
from those emotions. And so, I mean, that's one of the things artists do great. Bring it
Yeah.
all together into something.
Yeah. Well, no, and that gets into, so what is art, and you get to these discussions. It's funny that Coca-Cola, along with a bunch of other companies, and Coca-Cola has been the one that was in the news most, but you know about their Christmas
Yeah.
polar
They're the
bear
first
act.
big company to go AI on.
Yeah. And many consumers hated it, and they received a lot of hate and backlash. Adweek ran an article about all the backlash that Coca-Cola received. And what's funny is when I read those articles, they used the same language that the artist had used, that I had looked through in the dialogue. Artists talked about AI art being soulless. They talked about it being uncanny. and you saw these terms being used. Now the question being, would people know that if they didn't know what was created by, if they blindly just picked art? Some of the research suggests they wouldn't know. But my argument would be, I don't care in a blind aspect whether people would know. There's a sense of authenticity when they know how something was created. And authenticity is actually what makes art valuable. The
Yeah.
story behind the artist and how it was created
Right.
is what makes it valuable. It's not necessarily the output that makes it valuable. Now, people talk about the unique characteristics and so on, but if you look at the most valuable artwork, so much of it is the story. And so there's this authenticity element
You know
that,
what's interesting is as the story ends for that artist, it typically
sure,
begins for his artwork,
sure,
right? Or her
yeah, no,
artwork.
there's so many stories of artists who were not successful in their time, but right,
Yeah.
they're now their artwork is worth an absolute fortune. And yeah, but it goes back to the authenticity of that story. Think about premium brands. Why do people pay such a premium for certain brands? It's as much about the story as anything else. You can buy this like crazy expensive olive oil, and what's their value proposition? The value proposition is that the olive oil comes from some of the oldest trees that exist in the world, and it's this kind of old world process. In a blind taste test, probably no one would pick that olive oil as the best tasting olive oil.
But
That's not the value
the
proposition.
packaging and the marketing gave it that storyline, right? And created that illogical loyalty, you know?
Sure.
And so again, that's part of where we started in this portion of the conversation is marketing doing is marketing utilizing the messaging appropriately humanistically, or are they utilizing it more appropriately for monetary,
Sure. Yeah, and it's a hard question to answer
right?
because is that company that's marketing that olive oil, do they truly believe in what they're providing, or are they just doing it because they know consumers will pay a premium?
Same thing with wine,
Yeah.
right?
No, same with wine. Wine's actually one of the most famous experiments, the Stanford wine experiment.
Right.
Right? They slapped high price tags on certain wines. It was all the same wine, and basically they demonstrated that if it's a higher price point, people actually perceive that the wine tastes a lot better. And the reality is, this price has a placebo effect.
Yeah.
So Roy Sutherland, who's a very great speaker who has done a lot of TED talks and stuff, he would argue for psychological value that as long as you're trying to deliver good, authentic psychological value, that's as good as any other value. So as long as you are appealing to some people on some psychological level to where you're not deceiving them, you're not doing anything sketchy, but they just feel good about it from the standpoint of what they're buying, and whether you want to call it authenticity or something along those lines,
If
then
my
he would
Nikes
argue
are the
that
same as my sorry to cut you off. If my Nikes are as good as my Reeboks, you know,
Mhm,
who cares?
sure.
As long as I like them.
Well, I mean, branding is all psychological value. Most of what people pay premium for is it really better in some kind of tangible way. I don't know. Many of us have probably bought very high end brands that have fallen apart in very short order,
Yeah.
and but why aren't people outraged? Well, they're not outraged because they're not really buying the durability, reliability, unless that's part of the value proposition. In many cases, they're buying some kind of prestige or something along those lines. So,
Without a
it,
doubt. Yeah, you look at like I mean, let's use cars for an example. Something that I know you're familiar with based upon your bio. I think we
sure,
share a lot of familiar hobbies, but um, so we look at cars, and you know, we know for a fact that Range Rover is a questionable car to own.
sure,
If you're thinking about reliability, like if you're trying to get from A to B, it's still questionable type car, right?
Sure.
We don't know if it's going to get you there, but it's got a super high price tag and
Mhm.
it's a status symbol. I better buy it. Who
Yeah.
thinks that way? Are questions that I ask. I'm like, wait a minute. You have got one of the least reliable cars on the market, and you've got one of the highest price tags associated.
Mhm.
How does that continue?
Yeah. Well, it just goes back to people buy for psychological reasons, and Range Rover has positioned themselves as a premium offering. Reliability, durability is not their value proposition.
At
Purely
all?
psycho. No, well, you can make the same. So one of the brands that, if you look at any automotive influencers, will tell you to stay away from, at least in the current market, is Jeep.
Yes.
Right? Jeep is not a doesn't have a good history of being durable and reliable. They're rugged. Why
Right.
do they have such a loyal fan base? Loyal fan base is a lot of people who are going to model them anyway. Right? They're gonna mod them. They get some sense of value actually from working on them, improving them, and so reliability, durability is not their value proposition. If you're a person who wants reliable transportation, you should probably choose something else.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, I
completely
don't know if I
agree.
have it.
It's that illogical loyalty, right?
No, it's that illogical loyalty, and we are illogically loyal to a very large degree, and we could get into a whole discussion about cognitive dissonance and people's inability to change their perception and beliefs despite conflicting evidence, because that is part of the human condition.
That's
People,
absolutely.
there's a
And
percentage of
we
people.
could have a huge long conversation.
Would you like to come back
Well,
on in
we
three
have to.
months?
I know that time is short today, but Clinton, we're gonna have to do this again and plan for 2 hours. Gosh sakes, these are just unbelievably interesting conversations. I just enjoy the heck.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, this is a great conversation. Glad you guys enjoyed it. Have we run over on time? I'm not sure how long we're supposed to go.
We had this scheduled an hour, but yeah,
Okay,
phenomenal. I got all of your research links. We'll include those in the descriptions to the video
sure.
here. Yeah.
No, but you've got to come back on. These are
All
such
right. Yeah.
interesting conversations, and you know what? Next time we'll talk cars, right? And the illogical loyalty around that. And
Right, illogical loyalty. The illogical, what seems to be illogical loyalty. I watch a lot of guys doing restoration projects, and I'm recently watching a guy doing a restoration on an RV. But the sense of satisfaction, like someone gets from fixing something themselves,
yeah.
and
So
there's even
I've got a broken motor in a 2002 Chevy Avalanche that I've
Mhm.
had since inception, right? Since
Yeah.
birth of that car. And I have babied this thing, and it's a winter car. It's not something I drive all
Mhm.
the time, hoping it'll turn into a classic. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to say, okay, this thing is sitting there without a working engine. Do I dive in, buy the engine, and just overhaul the whole thing again?
Yeah.
And or do I go out and buy something smart and that fits our needs or this or that? And mind you, it's I don't need the car at all. But on
Yeah.
the other hand, I'm gonna miss it if it goes.
Sure. Well, and self-determination theory would predict that you would probably get more long-lasting value from repairing it yourself,
Right.
having a sense of accomplishment and mastery. There'd also be a sense of autonomy there, right? You're the one doing it, making the decisions.
Yeah.
And I think we see it over and over again. They come out related bias. It's actually called the IKEA effect,
Ah,
which explains why do people get value from stuff they repair themselves
yeah.
versus actually buying. It's much more efficient to buy.
Oh,
Uh,
by far.
yeah, but again, part of that human condition that drives us is that sense of accomplishment.
You know what? You just taught me something I didn't know. I couldn't put a reason to why I'm such a serial DIYer. Now I know.
Yeah, no, there is a there is a stronger sense of just I won't say euphoria, but people who I have talked into being DIYers, you should try to fix it yourself. Have generally come back and said, feel like my car just drives so much better after I fixed it. It feels better than
Yeah.
if I stop. And
I,
it is there's something to be said about that. Most people would actually feel more feel like that their life has more value if they did more stuff themselves
I think
instead of
that's
hiring.
true. I think that's true 100%.
By the way, if anyone watching this is a DIYer and wants to start a group, there's a great platform called Mingle. We'll help you get set up. We would love more DIYers on the platform.
Yeah, no, those are
A little
some
shout out.
very strong communities of DIYers out there.
Absolutely, they are. And you know what's interesting is when you start going down that DIY road, there are so many different groups and communities wrapped around DIYing and specific things like
Yeah,
building decks or drywalling or painting or framing, for instance. Cars, boats,
yeah.
blah blah blah.
Uh,
Awesome. Well, listen, I'm going to stop the recording. We appreciate you being here. Thank
yeah,
you.
thanks for having me, and feel free to reach out again if you want to do this
Oh, we
again.
will. I can guarantee it. If just you and I jump on, I'm okay. Whatever. If we bore with a DIYer, okay too. But we really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you guys. You guys have a good rest of your day.
Likewise. And if you know anyone that would be a benefit to be